Marcus Jones had planned his life quite well. He hadn't missed a day's work in 30 years. Just a few more weeks, and he was eligible to retire from his job. How excited he and his wife were. They had managed to save a little money after educating their children, and now they could do a little traveling. If they were careful, they figured, they would be able to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. Then, just 5 weeks before his retirement, Marcus woke up with a stabbing pain in his chest. An ambulance rushed him to the hospital, where the emergency crew called for the local heart team. A triple bypass saved his life, but left his bank account and savings devastated. The agonizing thoughts kept racing through his mind. If only I had quit smoking sooner. If only I had exercised a little more. Their little nest egg was nearly spent. The cost of prescription drugs would keep them merely existing on their meager retirement. What a change a few weeks had made in their lives. Friend, can you afford to have poor health? People spend billions of dollars a year for medical care. Disease is the costliest thing in the world that people spend their money for. How much, then, is it worth to be well? Ask the dying cancer patient or the person suffering from AIDS. Ask the parents of a child dying from leukemia or an older person deformed by arthritis. They will tell you that good health is priceless, that it's a blessing, never fully appreciated until lost. What is a year of life, or even one day, worth? Queen Elizabeth I is said to have cried on her deathbed, "All my possessions for one moment of time." But it can't be bought with money. Do you realize, however, that you can reap more and better years by simple, common-sense guidelines for health? Dr. Breslow of UCLA, the University of California, Los Angeles, did a research study over a period of 9 years. He asked 7,000 people 7 questions relating to health habits, and then observed these patients, comparing those who had followed positive health habits with those who had not. Here are the 7 questions he asked. Number 1, do you smoke? Number 2, do you drink alcohol, and if so, to what extent? 3, do you get regular exercise? 4, how many hours do you sleep every night? 5, how much do you weigh? 6, are you eating breakfast regularly? 7, do you snack between meals on a regular basis? Those who faithfully followed good health habits relating to these 7 questions lived 11.5 years longer than those who did not. What would you give for 11.5 years added to your life? What is being shared with you right now in this message could very well add years to your life, happy and healthy years. Do you think it will be worthwhile for you to listen carefully? It comes as a surprise to many people that God is concerned about our health and happiness here and now. Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your soul prospers. 3 John, verse 2. Jesus said, I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. John 10:10. Jesus wants us to have a happy, joyous, healthy life. He wants us to live life to its fullest. Is it possible to know how to have good health? It is. Many are unaware that in the Bible, God has given important rules and guidelines concerning healthful living. For decades, the lifestyle of the Orthodox Jew has been of considerable interest to medical researchers. The cancer mortality rate is far less than that of others, and they seem less prone to other catastrophic illnesses. Do Jewish people have a hereditary factor that gives them immunity to the leading killers which strike down others? It's interesting to note that when Jews begin eating as others around them do, their cancer rate, and that of other diseases too, is the same as that of other people. It's been discovered that the secret lies in their health practices, nutrition, and lifestyle. When God brought the Israelites out of Egypt, He reminded them of some very important rules and regulations concerning healthful living. After outlining His plan for good health, He gave a most remarkable promise to those who would follow His instructions. He said, If you will diligently heed the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in His sight, give ear to His commandments and keep all His statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you which I have brought upon the Egyptians. for I am the Lord who heals you. Exodus 15:26. He also said this, So you shall serve the Lord your God, and he will bless your bread and your water, and I will take sickness away from the midst of you. Exodus 23:25. Do you catch the significance of this? If we follow the Lord's instructions, the effects of disease can often be reversed. That is priceless information. What an amazing promise! Commenting on the fulfillment of this promise, the psalmist tells us, There was not one feeble person among their tribes. Psalm 105:37. Well, you say, probably the Egyptians didn't have the same diseases we have today. Wrong. A team of specialists from around the world gathered in 1975 for the express purpose of performing autopsies on the Egyptian mummies in the Manchester, England Medical School Museum. These mummies dated back to 1900 B.C., and the findings were remarkable. The ancient Egyptians suffered from many illnesses common to modern man: heart disease, cancer, vascular diseases, arthritis, hepatitis, tetanus, trichinosis, lockjaw, and others. Although Egypt was the educational and cultural center of the world during Moses' lifetime, its medical knowledge and remedies were very similar to those of the African witch doctor today. In 1552 B.C., not long before the birth of Moses, a famous medical book was written in Egypt called the Papyrus Ebers. This book lists scores of remedies or cures for a host of diseases, infections, and accidents, very few of which you would probably like to use. For slivers embedded deeply, it recommends rubbing worm's blood and horse dung into the wound. No wonder lockjaw took a hefty toll. For snake bite, drink water poured over an idol. Bald, rub into the scalp a tonic made from horses' hooves, date blossoms, and dog heels boiled in oil. The Bible tells us that Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. Acts 7:22. His writings are filled with instructions concerning sanitation, quarantine, personal hygiene, and nutrition, but not once did he prescribe any of the cures listed in the Papyrus Ebers. Where did Moses get these amazing health principles and guidelines? From God. Black Death and leprosy were the two most terrible plagues of the Middle Ages. The principles of public health given by God and taught by Moses after the Exodus brought these scourges under control. Millions of lives were saved as doctors turned to the church leaders for help during these plagues. George Rosen wrote, "Leadership was taken by the church, as the physicians had nothing to offer. The church took as its guiding principle the concept of contagion as embodied in the Old Testament. This idea and its practical consequences are defined with great clarity in the book of Leviticus." George Rosen, M.D., History of Public Health, pages 63 to 65. What a shame that 60 million people died from these plagues when the Bible principles of public health were there all the time. God designed our bodies. He knows how we can avoid disease and keep our bodies at optimum performance. God gave man a remarkable body with almost limitless possibilities. It has many delicate parts. God made us, and He knows exactly what is necessary to keep us healthy and at peak efficiency. A young man bought a shiny new car for which he had saved money for years. He was given the manufacturer's manual that told exactly how to care for his new car in the very best way to keep it running at its best for many years. It was an expensive car, and you would think the new owner would have at least read the instructions about its care, but he did not. The only thing he could think about was how fast it could reach 60 miles per hour in just seconds. He liked to make it go as fast as it could, then put on the brakes to see how quickly it could stop. He liked to hear the squeal of the tires. He didn't check the oil or water or air in the tires. It was a bother and took too much time. He couldn't waste his valuable time on such simple things. He wanted to be behind the steering wheel, driving where he wanted to go, and especially to the places where lots of people could see him speed by in his flashy car. Well, you can guess the rest of the story. Yes, the car didn't last long before it needed expensive repairs. Do we do the same thing with this wonderful body God has given us? We certainly want to follow His instructions, One trip to the hospital can wipe out a lifetime of savings. It will certainly be worth our time to go back to the Garden of Eden, back to creation, and notice some of the things God told Adam and Eve that promote good health. A healthy diet. Before sin came, God gave Adam and Eve a perfect diet to sustain and promote their health. See, I have given you every herb that yields seed which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food. Genesis 1:29. In modern language we would say they were given fruit, grains, and nuts. This was their food. God also gave them the tree of life, which supplemented their diet in a way that ensured eternal youth and health. After Adam and Eve sinned, God separated them from the tree of life and added vegetables to their diet. And you shall eat the herb of the field. Genesis 3:18. This, with fruits, grains, and nuts, was man's total diet until the great flood. Was it adequate? Yes, indeed. Consider that people on God's original diet lived to be hundreds of years old. The oldest man who ever lived on earth was Methuselah. All the days of Methuselah were 969 years, and he died. Genesis 5:27. After the flood, man's lifespan decreased markedly. Noah's son, Shem, lived 600 years. His grandson, 239 years. His great-grandson, 175 years. By the time of King David, man's lifespan had decreased to 70 years. That's a big drop, wouldn't you say? Plant life on the earth was severely limited by the great flood. Noah's supply of food was exhausted after he and his family had lived in the ark for more than a year. Not until then did God allow Noah and his family to eat animals as an emergency measure. Not all plants and all animals were good for food. God gave guidelines for the food considered good for man to eat. A distinction was made between clean and unclean animals. God even instructed Noah which animals to take with him and how many of each. You shall take with you 7 each of every clean animal, a male and his female. 2 each of animals that are unclean, a male and his female. Genesis 7:2. It's apparent that Noah knew which animals God considered clean or unclean. Later, when God brought the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt, he gave Moses dietary principles to protect their health and longevity. God identified which animals are clean and which are unclean for food. And you may eat every animal with cloven hooves, having the hoof split into 2 parts, and that chews its cud among the animals. Deuteronomy 14:6. Notice the guideline that is so easy to remember. Just 2 things. Number 1, split hoof, and number 2, chews the cud. A few of the common clean animals according to verses 4 through 6. Ox, sheep, deer, goat, wild goats, antelope, cows, and gazelle. Unclean animals now commonly used for food according to verses 7 and 8 would include the camel, rabbit, swine, and rock badger. Remember the 2 guidelines? If the animal has a split hoof and